So welcome back to another quick video. This is the car that I alluded to in the last Panamera vlog update. So this is one of the cars I'm considering changing the Panamera for, the daily driver. So as I mentioned last time out, I drove the JCW 3-door hatch over the weekend, and they've given me this one, they being the local mini dealer, to spend some time in next few hours and taking it back tomorrow morning to get a feel for the current car that's currently in production. That car I drove the weekend was an 18 plate pre-owned example. This one's a convertible. I wouldn't buy the convertible. I'll explain why in a moment, but we've got this one because they've toned down the exhaust on the current cars they're producing. And indeed this one sounds a little quieter than I was expecting it to. We'll go out for a drive in a short while and hopefully the camera will pick it up. It's a bit noisy inside, but hopefully it'll come through on the camera. As I mentioned, I wouldn't buy the convertible. There's a lot of scuttle shake on this thing. The steering column vibrates quite noticeably actually over poorly surfaced roads. The rear view mirror vibrates quite a lot as well. Those old-fashioned kind of indicators of convertibles are all present and correct in these things, but it certainly goes as well as the 3-door hatch. It sounds good in terms of induction, so all that's present and correct. It's just the exhaust doesn't seem to be quite as tuneful as I was hoping for. Of course, I might be able to fix that with a sports exhaust, an aftermarket exhaust. The dealer themselves actually suggested that might be feasible, so we'll look into that. So yeah, we'll go out for a drive in a short while, but I'll do a quick walk around the car and then we can go out for a spin. So these things are quite attractive pieces of design, I think. The black wheels I'm not all that keen on, if I'm honest. Our car would have the 18s, which are the duotone wheels, but other than that, they're quite attractive little cars. My wife is certainly quite taken with this one. I think she prefers the colour of this car to the idea of having a red or perhaps a British racing green Mini, however cliche that might be. At the front we have the LED lights with the bright corona rings, which illuminate as daytime running lights, of course, and I think the lights are the full LEDs. I'll experience that a little later on when the car is out on the local roads here at night, which is why I've got it overnight. This one obviously is the convertible. The roof mechanism is slightly rudimentary, shall we say. It's effective enough, but yeah, it's no Porsche Boxster. The wind deflector behind the front seats works well though. The boot is rather small, has to be said, but then it's a Mini. You wouldn't expect anything less. So yeah, overall it's quite funky. I think our spec would be something like, yeah, the red, the chili red, I think they call it, with the green and a black roof and mirrors in both cases. Under the bonnet, under the single clamshell one-piece bonnet, I should mention, is the 2-litre 4-cylinder 230 horsepower and 236, I think from memory, foot-pounds of torque unit. That gives this little machine, yeah, 60 in just over 6 seconds with the automatic transmission on this one. So they're certainly peppy enough, and you'll get 145, 150 miles an hour out of this if you really must. So yeah, it's quite an attractive little package. I just wish the exhaust as standard was a little more characterful, a little more interesting. So I think what we'll do now is get inside and go for a quick spin. So here we are inside the JCW. Now this is going to be, yeah, quite a quick little review. I've got the car overnight because, as mentioned in a previous video, we're thinking about ordering one of these. And when I'm buying a car, I like to try it in as many different scenarios as I can. So later on, when it's dark, much later of course, this is late June, I'm going to go out in the car and, yeah, test the lights and see how far the the main beam spread is, that kind of thing. I don't want to buy a car and then find out after I've bought it and collected it that the lights are pretty poor, for example. So yeah, this is only going to be a quick review because we've got the car just for the night. First thing to say is I wouldn't buy the convertible, as I think I mentioned a little earlier. The roads around here aren't the greatest, I will concede that, but you can probably pick it up in the background if I just stop talking and find a bump. There, that rattle, that kind of shaking, excuse me, shimmy sound, that's the window frames, and the header rail here all vibrating. It's not quite as well screwed together maybe or robust as some other convertibles, certainly compared to that Boxster 718 I had a couple of weeks ago. But it's it's pleasant enough, and I can understand the appeal of a convertible. But yeah, it's not something that I'd want. But in terms of why we've got this, other than the lights and so on, one of the things that concerns me with the Coopers that are making now, since all the regulations changed, is the fact that they are a good deal quieter than they used to be. So the one we had over the weekend was an 18 plate car, and it had quite the characterful exhaust. The engine intake noise was present and correct, as this one is, so when you're under power it sounds quite nice. But on the overrun, that 18 plate car would kind of pop and crackle, and yeah, it just adds a little, little character to the car. You don't get that in this. You get a little bit, just a teeny weeny bit, but it's not quite as loud as I'd want. So the dealer did make reference to the possibility of having an aftermarket exhaust fitted, which wouldn't blow the warranty to bits. So yeah, we may have to look at that. So yeah, this wouldn't be my cup of tea. We'll have the fixed head the fixed head 3-door hatch, I should say. I wouldn't go for the convertible, but this car mechanically is representative of the current offering. Hence, we're spending a night in it. Just trickling through a local village here, and we're about to enter a no speed limit. I wish, a national speed limit area. So we'll just come around here, and we get to the sign. We'll engage second gear, I think, from about 30 miles an hour, and you can see what it sounds like. Yeah, it does sound good under power. No complaints there whatsoever. And the key thing for me is to my next car, I want it to sound interesting. No more hybrids, no more diesels. So here we go, third into second, and that's 60. So it goes very well, and I've not driven many powerful front drive cars. When you change from first to second, also second to third, you get a little chirp of wheel spin and stability control light in the dashboard. So it's plenty of power. As I mentioned, that 2-litre 230 horsepower engine is more than enough for a car of this size. What is it, 1,200, 1,300 kilograms, maybe slightly less. There's not much to it really. So I can see the appeal with regards to the way it goes. We'll get to some slightly better roads in a moment, and we'll get a better feel for the handling and so on. But before we get there, just a quick shout out for the interior. The widescreen nav I'm kind of sold on. I wasn't going to bother spending $2,000 on the nav package, but I might have to now, because the graphics on the nav screen are quite nice, quite pleasant. The red trim is an option. I think it's about £250 for the red bits of trim dotted around the cabin. These seats are fantastic, very comfortable. With the comfort pack this car has, these are heated as well. They recently changed the trim on the seats, apparently. You no longer get the red trimming down the sides, it's all changed now to silver. And yeah, it's just about big enough in here. It does have a slightly large car feel, as I mentioned. There's enough elbow room to feel comfortable. Oddman space is a bit lacking. The door bins could do with it being a mite larger. Never seems to be quite enough room for my wallet and a couple of mobile phones. But anyway, here we go onto some slightly better roads. So there's a little bit of torque steer. It seems quite happy to follow the camber. So under power, it's wants to sniff out each and every little imperfection in the road surface. But then it's a Mini, right? So I wouldn't complain about that necessarily, because that's what the car is designed for. But yeah, this road is really highlighting the deficiencies in the convertible, the convertible body. The amount of shake in this rearview mirror, I can't easily film that, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would. It's quite surprising. I've come along here in my Panamera. I've come along here in that 718 Boxster. I've come along here in a Cayenne, actually. This is the same bit of road familiar to many people from the Harry's Garage videos, and it's quite a challenging bit of tarmac. But yeah, this thing is picking out every little bump, because in those other cars I mentioned, even the Cayenne, a lot of it you're isolated from. This though is, yeah, it's kind of skipping over the road surface. But again, that's what it's for. Right? It's a little go-kart feel. I can hear now that we're kind of driving a bit more enthusiastically, the odd little pop and bang from the exhaust, but it's not. Yeah, little pops and bangs, but it's not really as loud as I'd hope, and not as loud as an 18-plate car, certainly. Okay, so as I've said, I won't be buying a convertible. However, you guys might. So let's open this and let's go along the same bit of road, or at least a piece of it. Got to press it again. Complete the action with these rather ungainly struts, taking your eyes out. Let's go along the same piece of road again and see what it's like with the roof down. So this might go spectacularly wrong, because you may not even be able to hear what I'm saying. That's the parking radar going crazy. Yeah, it certainly sounds nice under power. You can certainly hear it. Hey, with the roof down. But I think any pops and crackles which are coming out of the exhaust are now getting sucked away in the slipstream, unfortunately. Just behind a little SUV thing here. Quite unfortunate timing, really, given the road we're on. There's a lot of torque steer. There's a lot of torque steer, actually. Yeah, it adds life to the car, and then it scrabbles for grip on the way out of slow bends. But the thing is, and this is pretty key, I think, when comparing it to something like, a pre-owned Boxster or something like that, you can have a lot of fun in this at below the national speed limit. So I'm doing 55 miles an hour on a 60, and it feels a lot quicker. So yeah, it's a plenty of fun factor in something like this. It reacts to the road, doesn't try to hide the fact that there's solid tarmac beneath you. It's got that kind of animation to it because it's so very, very light. So you're driving. But yeah, the scuttle shake, the way the steering column moves, actually is quite disconcerting. Oh dear. And whenever I look in the mirror, I've got a combination of horizontal movement in the mirror and also the roof flapping about in the breeze, which is also slightly disconcerting. So it's an experience with the roof down, but we'll pull over, I think, and put it back up again. Right, so rest of the car's dynamics. The steering is very lively. Again, it's quite a short wheelbase and a fairly decent track, actually. So yeah, the fact it's quite pointy, quite darty, probably isn't much of a surprise. It does that quite awful thing of just adding weight in sport in the belief that's what people want, but hey ho, that's the modern world. The brakes are very reassuring. Again, the car's pretty light, so you'd expect that, but yeah, hit the brake pedal and it just stops. Handling wise, you're always aware of that quite short wheelbase, But again, that's the car, right? That's what you're buying it for. You're not buying it to be some long, lazy 7 Series cruiser. It's a little lively little device. And that's why I like it. I just wish that exhaust was a little bit more, there in proceedings. And with the roof down earlier, the pops and bangs were getting sucked away in the slipstream. I just couldn't hear them at all. What were there in the first place? That sun's quite bright. So in summary, I like it. I really do. And I can see us having one. I need to speak to the dealership about the exhaust options. Just grab third here. Woohoo! Because I'd like the rear noise to match that from the front, or at least in terms of the sound it makes out of the exhaust under power, if that makes sense. But in terms of something completely different compared to the Porsche, something which is interesting to drive, makes a nice little noise, and kind of turns the daily commute into something, half interesting. A car that doesn't sort of make you want to just stay in bed, and a car that makes you want to go out and actually go for a drive just for the sheer hell of it, which is what I'm doing now, basically. Yes, I think we'll probably end up having one of these. So there you are, guys. Thanks all for watching. I'm going to keep on enjoying this thing, and for the next couple of hours, ideally on some way better tarmac, go out later on and see what the lights are like. Might get a bit of air here. And we'll see you next time. And I will as well. Drive safe. Cheers, guys.